Hey guys! In today's video, I'm going to share with you 3 easy watercolor painting ideas that you can use to practice some of the basic watercolor painting techniques for beginners. And this time we are going to practice the wet and wet technique. By the way, make sure to click on the bell and to comment below #Markification Squad in the first 24 hours for a chance to get a shout out and to win arts and crafts supplies in my ongoing giveaway. And now let's jump into the tutorial. The first thing you want to do is dividing your paper into 3 sections using either artist or washi tape. This not only allows you to try out different paintings while creating a beautiful white frame around it, but it can also help you to overcome the fear of a blank piece of paper by creating smaller and less overwhelming sections. For the wet and wet technique, we need to evenly apply a thin coat of water all over the paper. Make sure you don't add too much water and not too little. If you see rather a dome of water, then it's already too much. But if you see a glossy, shiny coat, it's the perfect amount. And now we can start. The first idea is to paint a sunset sky with a simple power line below. So load up your wet brush with a bright yellow color and then start applying the paint to the lower part of the paper slightly diagonally by changing up the thickness of the lines while leaving out some wet areas in between. Paint them really loosely and don't think too much. Next, mix a purple shade. Here I mixed a little bit of blue and red together until I was happy with the shade. And then repeat the steps. Apply the paint the same way as you did with the yellow color, but this time fill in the white gaps with the purple color. With this wet and wet technique, you want to be quick because we don't want to give the paper nor the paint time to dry. What happens is that the new wet paint will automatically run into the dry area, creating a cauliflower effect with dark edges that destroys the evenly blended colors. Once you created the general layout, you can darken some areas to create more depth. Mix a darker shade of purple and apply it to the upper area of the painting. And from here you can go ahead and play around with the yellow and purple color paint. Add a little bit more of the yellow and purple color paint to intensify the colors, but don't overdo it. Make sure you keep a lot of space for the yellow areas and keep them nice and bright, or otherwise everything will just turn brown and we destroy the dreamy and warm sunset effect. While the first painting is drying, we can move on to the second painting. With the wet and wet technique, you can also create beautiful nebula paintings. Here again, you want to apply a thin coat of water onto the paper. Next, load up your wet brush with a bright color. Here I'm using this lime green color, and then dab it onto the paper where you want to have the brightest area in the nebula. It's always better to start with a lighter shade and then darken the areas as you go. This way you have more control over your painting. From here, we can add more and more paint around those bright areas and let the paint melt into each other. Don't think too much, just focus on the bright and dark areas and let the paint do its magic. For this painting, I used all sorts of green and blue shades, but you can use any color combination you like. With the wet and wet technique, it's important to not only have the right amount of water on the paper, but also on your brush. If you load up your brush with too much water that is already kind of dripping, the water will run into the areas that are already started to slowly dry while creating a cauliflower shape that I mentioned in the beginning. If you notice that the paint started to dry already, don't add wet paint on top. Let it completely dry instead and then go over the areas again. This way you avoid these pesky cauliflower patterns. So it's better to test out how much water you need for your type of watercolors and then use this amount whenever you paint something. Intensify the colors until you're happy and then let everything completely dry. The third idea is to paint an ocean sunset. The first step is the same. You want to apply a thin layer of water onto the paper. Next, load up your wet brush with a bright yellow color and start distributing it starting at the center. And then blend it out towards the top area. From here, add a darker shade of yellow or orange and blend it in as you move upwards. But since we are painting a sunset, you can also use the same color to create a few clouds on top of the yellow color paint by loosely painting a few lines and let them slightly melt into the color next to it. Next, you want to load up your wet brush with blue color paint and then distribute it the same way, but this time starting from the top while moving downwards. From here, you can focus on creating a few more clouds using darker shades of blue, orange, and purple the same way as in the beginning. But make sure you don't use too much water. If you see that the paint starts running again, use a damp brush to slightly soak up some paint and to blend out the rest more evenly. I also used a tissue paper and soaked up some of the paint around the sun area right above the water. And now it's time to add the water to the lower part of the painting and to intensify the sky a bit more. Here you want to use a darker shade of blue and apply it in a streaky motion again while leaving out some white areas. Here you can add a few different shades of colors from the sky to make it look like the sky is reflecting in the water. Make sure you don't accidentally paint into the sky when you paint the water though, rather keep a thin line in between so you can add the proper horizon later. The reason why I chose these 3 paintings is because they are great exercises to practice how much paint and how much water you need when it comes to using the wet and wet technique. It's important to experiment and see what works best for your type of paper and paint. Add more and more clouds and reflections to the water until you're happy, and then let everything completely dry. When everything is completely dry, we can go back and add all the details that will make the paintings really come together. For the first painting, you can now use a darker shade of color and loosely paint the silhouette of trees and hills. By the way, I actually never use black colored paint. If I want to use a really dark color, I simply mix all sorts of dark colors together. Let the paint dry and then you can go ahead and draw the power line using a thin fine liner. To create the power line, draw a thick line vertically and then a small horizontal line to make it look like a cross. And from here, add 4 small squares along the horizontal line and a few wires connected to them below it. And now you can use these squares as a guideline to add the rest of the wires that start at one side, connect to the power line, and then disappear to the right side of the painting. There are different ways how to draw those power lines, so you can of course use some reference pictures on the internet to find something you prefer. And this is how it looks now. Let's move on to the nebula painting. Since I didn't have my acrylic paint with me, I used my beloved white ink pen to create small white stars all over the painting. I changed up the size of the dots and also added some shapes that look more like stars. But if you have acrylic paint, simply mix it with a little bit of water, load up your brush with the paint, and then sprinkle it over the painting. Just make sure you cover the rest of the paintings if you paint all 3 at the same time as well. One simple hack you can use when you add the details with the white ink pen, you can actually use a brush and blend out the ink a little bit. This way you can not only add crisp white details, but also create soft and faded effects. Lastly, let's add some more details to the third painting. Here you can add the silhouettes of hills along the horizon using a darker shade of color the same way as we did in the first painting. Since the paint is now completely dry, you can also use the same color to add more shadows on top of the water to create more depth. And if you want, you can also add a small boat to the painting to make it look more interesting and calm. And to add even more details, you can also use either white acrylic paint or a white ink pen to add a few water reflections and small white clouds below the darker areas to make everything look more three-dimensional. Let everything dry, remove the tape, and you're done. A huge shout out to Zareen, thank you so much for watching my videos and for all your support. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, make sure to give this video a thumbs up to support this channel, and for more painting ideas, check out the videos right here. Thank you so much for watching guys, have a wonderful day, and I will see you soon. Bye!